barter, not deceit, the invention of lacrosse and basketball, extensive trade networks predating Columbus, sophisticated governance like the Iroquois Confederacy influencing U.S. democracy, advanced agriculture, corn, potatoes, sophisticated medicine, and significant cultural contributions often overlooked in traditional history, with facts like using dogs as pack animals, and the crucial role of women in leadership often being surprising to many. Here are some facts that might surprise you. The Indian giver misconception. The term came from cultural misunderstanding, where European settlers saw native barter systems, expecting an equivalent trade for gifts, as stingy, not realizing it was reciprocal exchange, and it is one of most offensive things you can call someone. The phrase, Indian giver, is a harmful stereotype rooted in a misunderstanding of Native American gift-giving practices. In many indigenous cultures, gifts were given as part of complex social, diplomatic, or reciprocal relationships, where returning or exchanging gifts maintained balance and mutual respect. European settlers, unfamiliar with these customs, often misinterpreted the return of a gift as deceit or theft. This gave rise to the derogatory term, which unfairly painted Native Americans as untrustworthy. In reality, indigenous gift economies were sophisticated systems of social, political, and economic exchange. Far from the negative image the phrase implies. Basketball's roots. James Naismith, the inventor of basketball, drew inspiration from Native American stickball games. Basketball traces its origins to December 1891, when Dr. James Naismith, a Canadian-born physical education instructor, was challenged to create a new indoor sport at the International YMCA Training School in Springfield, Massachusetts. The goal was simple but demanding: design a game that could be played during harsh winters, kept athletes active, and reduced the physical violence common in other sports of the era. Naismith combined elements from existing games, such as soccer's passing, rugby's teamwork, and a children's game called Duck on a Rock, which emphasized arcing shots, to form a unique concept. He nailed 2 peach baskets to opposite ends of a gymnasium, used a soccer ball, and introduced 13 basic rules that prioritized ball movement, accuracy, and discipline over brute strength. The game quickly gained popularity, spreading through YMCA centers across the United States and internationally. As the sport evolved, peach baskets were replaced with metal hoops and nets, dribbling was introduced, and standardized rules were established. What began as a practical solution to a winter training problem grew into a global sport, laying the foundation for modern basketball's speed, strategy, and universal appeal. Sophisticated agriculture. Native Americans developed crops like corn, maize, potatoes, tomatoes, and squash, which transformed global diets. Long before European contact, many Native American societies practiced highly sophisticated agriculture that rivaled and, in some cases, surpassed Old World methods. Tribes such as the Maya, Aztec, Inca, and numerous North American nations engineered advanced farming systems including terraced mountainside fields, vast irrigation networks, and flood control canals. These systems allowed crops to thrive in deserts, rainforests, and high-altitude environments once thought impossible to farm. Native farmers also developed sustainable techniques like the Three Sisters method, planting corn, beans, and squash together to naturally enrich soil, control weeds, and maximize yields without chemical fertilizers. They domesticated major crops such as corn, potatoes, tomatoes, cacao, and peppers, foods that now feed much of the world. Despite this, native agriculture was long dismissed as primitive, even though it laid the groundwork for modern sustainable farming practices still studied today. Iroquois Confederacy, a powerful democratic league of nations, Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, Seneca, Tuscarora, that inspired U.S. democracy structure. Long before the United States existed, the Iroquois Confederacy, also known as the Haudenosaunee, formed one of the most advanced democratic systems in the world. Established centuries before European contact, the Confederacy united 6 nations under a shared constitution known as the Great Law of Peace. This system emphasized balance, consensus, and unity, allowing each nation to retain independence while cooperating on matters of war, diplomacy, and law. Power within the Confederacy was distributed, not centralized, and women played a crucial role by selecting and removing chiefs, a fact rarely taught in mainstream history. Scholars have long argued that the structure of the Iroquois Confederacy influenced early American democratic ideals, including federalism and representative governance. Yet this contribution is often overlooked or dismissed. Extensive trade. Vast networks existed across North America, with trade goods and ideas moving thousands of miles before Europeans arrived. Long before European arrival, Native American societies maintained vast and highly organized trade networks spanning thousands of miles across the continent. Goods such as copper from the Great Lakes, turquoise from the Southwest, obsidian from the Rocky Mountains, shells from the coasts, and cacao from Mesoamerica were traded far beyond their places of origin. These networks connected diverse cultures, climates, and regions through established trade routes that functioned much like early highways. Trade was not only economic but diplomatic, strengthening alliances and cultural exchange between nations. Items carried symbolic, spiritual, and political meaning, not just monetary value. Despite this, native trade systems were often ignored or minimized, even though they reveal a level of organization, communication, and economic complexity that challenges the myth of isolated or primitive societies. Advanced medicine, herbal remedies, complex surgical techniques, and deep understanding of botany were common. Native American societies developed advanced medical knowledge rooted in careful observation, experimentation, and centuries of practice. Healers used hundreds of plant-based medicines, many of which are still used today, to treat pain, infections, wounds, and illnesses. Remedies such as willow bark for pain relief, echinacea for immune support, and antiseptic poultices were highly effective long before modern pharmaceuticals existed. Medical practices also included bone setting, complex surgeries, and holistic approaches that treated the body, mind, and spirit as interconnected. European settlers often relied on native healers to survive unfamiliar diseases and environments, yet this medical expertise was later dismissed or erased. Modern science continues to validate many native medicinal practices, proving they were far more advanced than history books often admit. Lacrosse origins. Known as Taworathon or stickball, it was a spiritual and physical game with spiritual significance, notes the Smithsonian Magazine. Lacrosse originated with Native American nations centuries before European contact, particularly among the Haudenosaunee, Algonquin, and other eastern woodlands tribes. Known as the creator's game, it was far more than a sport. It held deep spiritual, cultural, and healing significance. Games could involve hundreds of players, span miles of land, and last for days, serving as a way to resolve conflicts, train warriors, and honor the creator. The rules, equipment, and purpose of lacrosse were later modified and commercialized by Europeans, who stripped much of its spiritual meaning. Today, lacrosse is recognized as one of North America's oldest sports, yet its native origins and sacred role are often overlooked, making its true history surprising to many who assume it began in modern schools or clubs. Women's power. Many societies were matrilineal, with women holding significant power in council and choosing leaders. In many Native American societies, women held significant political, economic, and spiritual power, far beyond what was common in European societies at the time. Among nations like the Iroquois, Haudenosaunee, women owned the land, controlled food production, and had the authority to appoint or remove male chiefs. Lineage and inheritance were often matrilineal, meaning family identity and property passed through the mother. Women also served as healers, diplomats, and spiritual leaders, shaping decisions that affected entire nations. Early European observers were often shocked by this balance of power, and later downplayed or ignored it in historical records. The idea that native societies were male-dominated is largely a myth, masking a long tradition of gender balance and female leadership. The first Americans. They weren't just from Asia. Archaeological finds suggest diverse origins, with some arriving much earlier than the Clovis culture. Native Americans are the original peoples of the Americas, with ancestors who arrived on the continent at least 15,000 to 20,000 years ago, and possibly much earlier according to recent discoveries. These early populations migrated, adapted, and developed diverse cultures across vastly different environments, from Arctic tundra to tropical forests and desert plains. Over thousands of years, they formed complex societies with distinct languages, technologies, and belief systems. Despite this deep history, Native Americans were long portrayed as late arrivals or temporary occupants of the land. The term First Americans highlights a truth often minimized. Indigenous nations were established, thriving, and deeply connected to the continent long before European exploration or settlement began. No concept of land ownership. Initially, land was often seen as communal, a concept foreign to Europeans focused on individual ownership. Many Native American societies originally viewed land as a shared resource rather than a commodity to be bought, sold, or owned individually. Land was considered sacred, tied to community, spirituality, and survival, with the belief that humans were stewards rather than owners. Hunting grounds, rivers, and forests were used collectively, and access was often governed by traditions, agreements, and respect for natural balance. This worldview clashed with European settlers, who imposed private land ownership and legal titles, often ignoring indigenous systems of stewardship. The misconception that Native Americans didn't use land or had no rights fueled centuries of displacement, but in reality, these communities had highly organized and sustainable land management practices long before foreign laws arrived. Unique writing systems. Some tribes, like the Cherokee, Sequoia's syllabary, developed their own complex writing systems. Several Native American civilizations developed their own unique writing and record-keeping systems long before widespread European influence. The Maya created a complex hieroglyphic script that recorded history, astronomy, rituals, and governance with remarkable precision. The Inca, though without written text, used quipu, a system of knotted cords to track census data, resources, and messages across vast distances. These systems demonstrate advanced intellectual abilities, challenging the myth that pre-Columbian societies were illiterate or primitive. They were not just tools for communication but also for preserving culture, knowledge, and memory across generations. Advanced cities. Cahokia, near modern St. Louis, was a massive city with complex mounds and a population rivaling European cities around 1050 AD. Long before European settlers arrived, Native American civilizations built highly advanced cities with complex infrastructure, planning, and architecture. The Aztec capital Tenochtitlan, built on Lake Texcoco, featured canals, causeways, temples, and bustling marketplaces that impressed even Spanish conquistadors. In the Mississippi Valley, the Mississippian city of Cahokia included massive earthen mounds, organized neighborhoods, and sophisticated trade networks. These urban centers were not temporary or rudimentary. They were carefully planned hubs of political, economic, and cultural life. Despite this, early European accounts often downplayed their size and sophistication, leaving a false impression that the Americas lacked true urban civilization before colonization. Wampum belts. Elaborate shell bead belts weren't just decoration but recorded treaties, histories, and laws. Wampum belts were more than decorative items. They were powerful tools of communication, law, and memory among Native American nations.